Hello, faithful, and welcome to the 49ers Plus podcast. I'm Al Moriello, and this is your source for the most objective 49ers discussion and analysis, plus no hot takes or clickbait. Today, we're going to discuss the 49ers dropping their first preseason game 30-9 to the Denver Broncos, how their second stringers fared against most of the Broncos starters for the first couple drives. We're going to be discussing some good, we're going to be discussing some bad, and some bubble players who might have helped their chances, at least based on this first preseason game. So let's get right into it. Niners drop a game. They were up 9-0 for whatever it's worth. Denver scored 30 unanswered points after the 49ers got a safety. The offense and defense in the second, third, and fourth quarters could not do much for the 49ers, and Denver, behind backup quarterback Jarrett Stidham and others, really had their way offensively and defensively with San Francisco, but it started out pretty good. Now, preseason games, joint practices the Niners and Broncos had earlier in the week where we heard, Brock threw 2 interceptions. I believe one was during 7-on-7, one during 11-on-11, or they might have been both during 7-on-7. Not a big deal, right? And even these preseason games, not a big deal. Nobody should get too high or too low, at least from the fandom, the legitimate media, content creators, anybody that's watching the games. You just want to get out of training camp, joint practices, and preseason without injury. And we know San Francisco has struggled mightily with that. Welcome to the team, Amir Abdullah at running back. 5 snaps into it, hurt. And Jeff Wilson, back again with his second stint for the 49ers, was just signed today as I am filming this on Tuesday night. But for what it's worth, the 49ers, essentially second-string players, fared pretty well against Denver's mainly starters, or at least significantly more starters for Denver than San Francisco. First drive, Mac Jones goes 3 for 3. A 50-yard bomb to rookie Jordan Watkins, which was nice to see. And that drive was capped off by a 5-yard touchdown run by Patrick Taylor. Now, offensively, the only starters that the Niners played was Ben Bartch at left guard, and it was either Kyle Shanahan or Chris Forrester came out this week and said the left guard spot is Ben Bartch's job to lose. And Demarcus Robinson, who could be starting for San Francisco if the Juwan Jennings calf injury quasi holdout extends to week 1, if Demarcus Robinson is not suspended by the NFL for his DUI. And it's still crazy that we're at August 10th and counting, and the NFL still has not made a decision on that. I'm sure the NFL has a lot of things going on, and probably a lot of things more important than this Robinson case, but it's been out there for a while. Just let everybody know, right? But that first drive looked good. The other 2 drives for the quote-unquote starting second-string offense was a punt and a Mac Jones interception. Jones started out 4 for 4, finished 4 for 7. Defensively, for San Francisco, first drive against Bo Nix, Cortland Sutton, and a majority of the Broncos starting offense. Broncos go 7 for 31 yards and a punt. Then the next drive was 3 plays, negative 10 yards, and a safety courtesy of nickelback Chase Lucas. Robert Saleh sends a double blitz. D. Winters off the left side of the defense, Chase Lucas off the right, and Lucas kept contained pretty well, so Nix couldn't get outside him. Nix throws the ball in the end zone, out of bounds, does not get it back to the line of scrimmage. San Francisco up 9-0. And then it's all downhill from there, if we want to even use the word downhill in relation to a preseason game. So we started off with at least some positives. And listen, the Niners, let's just at least take away, in the first quarter-ish, the 49ers second stringers looked pretty good against the Denver Broncos, primarily starters. Once it became a full-fledged second string versus second string, or third versus third, or however far down the depth chart you want to go on a 90-man roster, Then things started to either fall apart or not obviously look as well as it looked on the first couple drives offensively and defensively, even though the second drive ended in a punt and then Mac Jones had a pick, whatever. At least take away from half of the first quarter or all the first quarter that the Niners' primary backups had a pretty decent showing for the most part. Again, for what it's worth. Let's stay positive and talk about other good things that we saw. So I watched the game last night live, signed up for NFL Plus for the $7 for the 1 month. I'm going to check out the 3 preseason games that I'll cancel, but I rewatched today, and undrafted rookie free agent running back Corey Kiner out of Cincinnati, the best rusher on the team, which isn't saying much because they couldn't muster over 93, 94 yards. But he went 10 for 45. He looked decisive, showed good vision, ran with some good power, has decent burst. He's not a burner, nor is Jordan James, rookie out of Oregon, who was held back because he broke one of his fingers in the joint practice with the Broncos. So Corey Kiner got the majority of the carries, or most of the carries, out of all the running backs, and showed some pass blocking chops on a couple different, at least 2 pass protection sets where he did pick up a free rusher. So a good showing for a player who might right now be on the outside looking in outside of injury. Obviously, Grendo's got the leg injury. I think it's a hamstring or quad. Jordan James with a broken finger. Patrick Taylor probably is the inside track on running back 4 just due to special teams. But Corey Kiner, I don't want to say his ceiling is the practice squad, but a good first showing. Wasn't a great first showing, but a solid first showing for the rookie. Another rookie, Jordan Watkins, out of Ole Miss, went 3 for 56, had that nice, somewhat contested, deep catch down the sideline for 50 yards. What's interesting about that play, if anybody noticed, not that he got tackled by Talanoa Hufanga, it's that someone who's got, 4.3-ish speed got tracked down by Talanoa Hufanga. And it's not like Hufanga was running full blast and Watkins was jogging. After Watkins secured the catch, he was running, got tracked down by Hufanga, 50-yard gain. So his other 2 receptions went for 3 yards. So obviously that average looks good. And he showed, at least on one play, some big playability, but we're going to temper obviously everything. He did not run a good route on a deep out on the left-hand side where Mac Jones threw an interception. It's going to happen. Ole Miss doesn't have the most, if not all colleges don't have the most sophisticated route trees for players coming out. So for a first preseason game, and he got a whole lot of snaps on offense. I think he was only behind rookie guard Connor Colby for second most snaps on the team. So a good or solid first impression by Watkins. Demarcus Robinson, the veteran from the Rams, 2 for 20, decisive outs, not far passes, obviously, if you're only going for 20 yards, but made his 2 receptions for Mac Jones. Jake Tonjes battling with Ross Dwelley for tight end 3 for 56 yards, made a contested catch, took a big shot in the ribs on 6 targets, led the team in targets. Let's flip it over to defense. We all know that whoever watched the game, Nickelback Chase Lucas was flashing, 8 total tackles, 3 hurries, had the safety of Bo Nix. Staying in the secondary, rookie Marquise Siegel out of Kansas State, 7 tackles. He was flashing. And Tatum Bethune, who went out with an ankle injury, came back, finished with 6 tackles. Bit more sure-handed of a tackler than Nick Martin, who we're going to get to momentarily. Starting cornerbacks were Dallas Flowers and Darrell Luter. They made some plays. Did they give up some plays? Yes, but they showed well. They got a good amount of snaps also on defense. They're both 6 feet or taller, outside boundary corners. And I think now Dallas Flowers was with Gus Bradley in Indianapolis 2 years ago in 2023 when he tore his Achilles. Seems to be all the way back, got some kick return duties as well. Now, these are players that could be cornerbacks 4 and 5 when you obviously know that Demo, Renardo Green, and Upton Stout are going to be 1, 2, and 3. And I'm not going to say Upton Stout's guaranteed to be the starting nickel. It's tracking that way if you're listening to Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch in training camp. Stout was held out of the game with a sore calf. But if they are like the 3 locks to make the roster, obviously, then cornerbacks 4 and 5 could very well be Flowers and Luter. Now, you also have, Trey Brown, you have Chase Lucas, who made a nice showing as well. So if the Niners only keep 5 corners, they're going to be letting go of, a solid backup cornerback somewhere on the roster. If they keep 6, that gives them a little bit more wiggle room somewhere, but obviously they're going to need to make, cuts anyway. And the last player I want to, call out in terms of the good, Junior Bergen, at least for 1 punt return, had a 28-yard return. Did not catch, I think, his only target offensively, but that's the way that he's going to make the roster, obviously, for punt and kick returns with Jacob Cowing out. It gave Junior Bergen, maybe a few more opportunities on offense. Now, the bad. Now, when you lose 30-9, you can say that there's a whole lot of bad, except preseason, no one's game planning for anybody. A lot of backup players all backup players. 98% of the players that played were backup players, at least the majority of the snaps. And they are players that probably are not going to make the 53-man roster. And they were going up against players that are probably not going to make again the 53-man roster for the Broncos. I think if you want to say anything, we can't say anything definitively, but the Broncos backups are probably better than the 49ers backups at this point, at least in one game from what we saw. But let's start out with the quarterbacks. They were consistent because they all threw an interception. Mac Jones had the deep out that was undercut in the first quarter, going to Jordan Watkins. Carter Bradley threw I don't know if it's a bad interception, but the middle linebacker right in front of him. Obviously, it's one of those didn't see him situations. And Tanner Mordecai, who was released and came back, did a whirling dervish, scrambling around, bad interception down by the sidelines where I don't know if he was looking to try to squeeze it into the receiver there, who, not that he was triple team, but there was 3 Bronco players around him, or he just didn't get enough on it to throw it out of bounds. Either way, a bad decision. Just, if you're going to buy time and dance around, if there's nothing there, just throw the ball away. And Mordecai obviously had a fumble. I don't know if it was a possession before or after that. So congratulations, all 3 quarterbacks throwing interceptions. We saw it if you watched the game. Spencer Burford gave up 2 quick pressures to Nick Bonito on consecutive snaps. And Austin Pleasance at right tackle allowed a pressure as well. And if people are going to come out and say, oh, well, they struggled. For Spencer Burford, those were the only 2 pressures he'd allowed all game, and he played almost 30 snaps. Same with Austin Pleasance. They both played in the high 20s, an equal number of snaps. Pleasance allowed 1 pressure. Burford allowed 2 to Nick Bonito, an outside linebacker who had 13.5 sacks last year for the Broncos. Are we going to hold that severely against somebody who hasn't played tackle consistently since his junior and senior year in college? So we're talking about 4 seasons ago. No team really out there has starting quality depth on the offensive line. Now, some players may have maybe a guard or a tackle that could be a solid swing tackler, solid interior player if somebody gets hurt, but nobody has starting caliber linemen across the line, or I would even say 2 or 3, forget 3, say 2 spots on the backup offensive line. So between Burford and Pleasance, Isaiah Prince allowed a pressure, Isaac Alarcon allowed a pressure, who'll be on the practice squad as player 17 for the international pathway if he's still eligible. I'd have to check on that. And Andre Dillard, who the Niners signed, formerly of the Eagles and Packers, still hurt. People out there could say, oh, well, we really need Andre Dillard to get healthy for this year. I'm not worried about the Niners tackle situation. Next year, I will be, because Colton McKivitz will be gone for free agency. I don't think the Niners are going to match whatever he's going to command. Again, if Jalen Moore got $15 million a year from the Chiefs, he's going to get about that somewhere, and the Niners aren't going to pay it. And what if Trent Williams retires or suffers a serious injury? The Niners could very well have two new starting offensive tackles next season, which just made it surprising that they did not invest more heavily in the O-line beyond Connor Colby as a 7th-round draft pick, and he's a guard, but did not take a tackle of the future with an earlier pick. Just surprising to me. But the Niners have options, and I think Spencer Burford and Anthony Pleasant's play against the Broncos in preseason game 1 is getting overblown when Burford had 25 or 26 other snaps that were not pressures, and Austin Pleasant's had 27 or 28 snaps that were not pressures on his side either. Now remember, and they were also playing with backup offensive linemen, so they could potentially, if one of those had to come in, say Burford comes in, and because Trent Williams gets injured, he'll still be playing with 4 other offensive linemen. Maybe it doesn't help a tackle as much as maybe it helps a guard, because you get maybe some support from a center or a tackle, or obviously, juice or a tight end. But I am not on the, holy shit, the Niners need to make a move at tackle train, because every team is in this situation. It's not just San Francisco. So let's move off the O-line. The run D, for what it is worth, looked like the run D from last year. 34 rushes for 153 yards. Based on this one game, it looks like you could make the argument that CJ West is the rookie that has the immediate potential to start over an Alfred Collins. Now, Collins will give him some slack. That whole second round players holding out, he didn't come to camp till a little bit later, had a foot issue that limited him in OTAs. So he's still getting acclimated. More of a run stuffer than a pass rusher, and that goes for both of them. But CJ West was, splitting double teams or holding his ground a little bit more than Alfred Collins when I went back and watched this game for a second time. Does that mean Alfred Collins is going to be a bust? No, it's one game. There's still several weeks of training camp, joint practice with the Raiders if this upcoming week, if the Niners even have enough players healthy to do that, and another preseason game Saturday in Las Vegas. Staying with defense, rookie linebacker Nick Martin. I don't want to say he looked lost, but he was overrunning some plays, late to get off blocks. He did miss 2 tackles. Right now, linebacker 2 is D. Winter's job to lose. And there's the potential that Luke Gifford could beat out Nick Martin for linebacker 3. He's obviously going to make the team. His ceiling is linebacker 2, where he could slide all the way down to linebacker 4. And we'll see if the Niners carry 5 or 6 linebackers this year. First game, the speed, and Nick Martin is a fast sideline to sideline missile, type of player. But the diagnosis, it's not just quarterbacks, guys, where processing matters. Every position on the football field, hell, every position in any sport. He has to process, trust what his eyes are seeing. Instincts matter, speed, knowing when to be able to, having the strength to disengage blocks, taking the right angles, wrapping up, not diving unnecessarily. Things that all rookies need to understand and be coached up to avoid. And Nick Martin is no different. He could be a starter sometime this season. He could be a starter week 1 in Seattle. But I think right now it's D. Winter's job to lose. Now let's conclude the podcast with bubble players who help themselves. And again, preseason game 1, a lot of training camp to go, 2 more preseason games to go, and God knows who else is going to get injured for this friggin' team. But Bradley Anae, defensive end, played in the UFL in the spring. I think led the league in sacks, or had about 6.5 sacks. Good showing. Worked with Robert Saleh, when Saleh was with the Jets. Had 3 pressures. Pretty not an bend rusher, speed rusher. He's not a Bryce Huff by any means, and he's not a Nick Bosa, by any means, obviously, right? But he could be better than a Robert Beal. He could be better than a Sam O. And those are the players that I think he'll be battling with for defensive end 5. Should the Niners go 5 defensive ends? I mean, at worst, if Bradley Anae doesn't show out tremendously and get picked up by another team, he could be one of the 6 veteran practice squad players. So could a Sam O. So could a Robert Beal. When you look past Bosa and Mykel Williams and Bryce Huff and Yetur Gross-Matos, I mean, those are your four. Now, Yetur is interesting. He could be a cap casualty. If he gets released, the Niners could save about $4.8 million on the cap, but the body type, the 6'5", almost 270, can play inside and outside. Bradley Anae is not that big. He's 6'3", 250, 255, might be 260, but he's not, doesn't have the frame that Yetur does, and can't move up and down the line the way that a Mykel or Yetur could. But the potential to battle for DN5, I think, is very interesting. And Bradley Anae with Sam O out and Robert Beal, this is year 3, right? He hasn't asserted himself beyond DN4 or 5 already. So if a better option comes along, you just strengthen your team at those bottom roster spots at different positions. Defensive tackle Kalia Davis on the last year of his deal looked pretty good, showed some power with a bull rush, had the only 49er sack, or maybe they had one more. But he's in a battle, to me, with Sebastian Valdez, rookie undrafted free agent out of Washington that the team calls Hulk because of his power for either defensive tackle 4 or D tackle 5. Again, are the Niners going to carry 4 or 5 of this position on the line as well? Remember, Kevin Givens is out probably until midseason at the earliest. The D tackles right now, you have Jordan Elliott, you have the 2 rookies in West and Collins, you have Kalia Davis, you have Sebastian Valdez. Jordan Elliott is another player. When you look at the Niners, who they could potentially release at final cuts that could save them chunks of money, there are not many. It's Yetur, and Jordan Elliott could save him $2.9 million. You release Elliott, now you really have no veteran presence on the line because Kevin Givens is out. So I think Elliott's going to wind up making the team outside of injury. And Evan Anderson, I don't want to forget about him. I don't think he played. I don't know if he was injured or whatnot. I think he actually was. Did not play, so he's going to be there as well. So again, defensive tackles 4 or 5. I can imagine 1 or 2 making their way onto the practice squad because, again, of how bad that run defense was. And that's something that'll probably get better as the season goes on, especially with West and and Collins getting reps, understanding the system. You know, rookies are going to look better later in the season than earlier unless they get wear down and fatigued and injured. Talked about Chase Lucas earlier, another player that looked good, helped himself. Should the Niners carry 6 cornerbacks, excuse me. Because again, we mentioned it's Demo, it's Renardo Green, it's Upton Stout. Chase Lucas is probably going to play, we would say, exclusively inside. Let's say as Upton Stout's backup. And then you have outside Dallas Flowers, Darrell Luter, Trey Brown can play inside and outside. But Chase Lucas, even in one preseason game, you heard the commentator say things are starting to click for him. He's, trusting his instincts. He's seeing those inside runs. He's blitzing with decisiveness. He's not taking hard angles at quarterbacks or running backs. He's giving himself a chance. And any player that's giving themselves a chance, that's all you can ask for because everything else is out of your control, including injury. And all it takes, look like Kevin Givens goes down. That could mean someone like a Sebastian Valdez makes the defensive line at defensive tackle. Running backs, Jeff Wilson is back. Amir Abdullah is hurt. I don't think Jeff Wilson is going to make, the team. It's really more of a preseason type thing, and he could end up on the practice squad as well. But when you have Gorendo hurt and Jordan James hurt and Amir Abdullah gets hurt and McCaffrey's not going to play, these are, and Jeff Wilson's obviously familiar with the system. Still surprising that he did not initially get the nod over Amir Abdullah. But he's back, and he's going to get some run in the joint practice in the preseason game next Saturday against Las Vegas. And now let's flip it to the offensive side in terms of bubble players on the O-line. Connor Colby, the rookie out of Iowa, 7th round draft pick, and the undrafted rookie free agent, Drew Moss. Now, Connor Colby, most snaps on offense. He had a 77.8 offensive line grade, the top O-line grade on the team. Drew Moss played 29 snaps. He had an 83.7 pass blocking grade, which was tops on the team. And Drew Moss was someone that was more of a high PFF graded run blocker in college at Colorado State than pass blocking. So let's take this all with a grain of salt. Let's follow this up with Ben Bartch, who started at left guard. I think he got around a dozen or so snaps, had an 81.5 pass blocking rating, but a 46.3 run blocking rating. Actually, was on 15 snaps. Now, it's Ben Bartch's job to lose. I don't think he's going to lose it, but the offensive line is going to be very interesting. Let's assume Ben Bartch is the starter. So, it's Williams, Bartch, Brendel, Pooney, and McKivitz. There's going to be there's no pure swing tackle, and I've had them actually flipped. I thought Austin Pleasance a couple podcasts ago was going to be the primary backup to Trent Williams and Spencer Bierford the primary backup to Colton McKivitz. That's not the case. They've flopped, but you're going to have an offensive tackle on each side. The Niners are not going to carry 10 offensive linemen, which means there's 2 spots open in the interior. And I think one is or should go to Matt Hennessy because he has center experience. And if something happens to Jake Brendel, now someone like Drake Nugent, second-year player out of Michigan, undrafted, could be on the practice squad again this year, but Hennessy can play all 3 interior line positions. Now, Burford could play interior also, which is why I think no matter, unless he looks so bad and gets steamrolled every practice and every joint practice and game after this, he's going to make the team because he can play inside and outside. When you're a backup, versatility is what keeps you on the roster. But let's say Hennessy makes it. Let's say Burford makes it and Pleasance makes it. There's one spot left in my mind, and that's either going to go to Connor Colby, Drew Moss, or Nick Zakiel. And I think, Zakiel has shown the past 3 years what he is, and he's a backup player. There's no shame in that. There's starters and there's backups. First string, second string, third string, like in any sport. And he's getting paid really, really well to not play or play exclusively on special teams or whatever it may be. But I think this winds up being an interesting, in my mind, one of the final, if not one of the last 2 spots on the offensive line where you're going to have a rookie 7th rounder, a rookie undrafted free agent, and a going into his 4th year player potentially battling for that last spot. Now, listen, if someone like, if Connor Colby makes the team, then I could see Drew Moss on the practice squad. I could see Nick Zakiel on the practice squad. They should definitely bring at least 1 tackle and at least 1 guard onto the practice squad. Hell, if you want Drake Nugent again as someone with, that's exclusively a center on the practice squad, that's fine too. But they're at least in week 1, seeing players getting, rookies, players new to the team to get an extensive number of reps. And it's become a war of attrition at certain positions, especially at running back, shuffling players in and out at offensive line, defensive line, in terms of some of the pickups and drops the Niners made, in the past, 7 days. And we'll see. Haven't heard anything today regarding, if the joint practice is in jeopardy. Was it last year or 2 years ago? The Niners were so banged up, they had to cancel a joint practice. I believe it was against the Saints. Nothing right now. It could change in a couple days, but that at least will be something else to keep our eye on. The Niners will be practicing Monday and Tuesday before leaving for Las Vegas, I believe on Wednesday, for their joint practice Thursday ahead of their game on Saturday. So Niners dropped the first preseason game. Things are not nearly as bad as some content creators or faux media members may have you believe. More growth and progression and intrigue in terms of training camp battles that are going to happen. And I'm sure there's going to be more roster shuffling beyond just Jeff Wilson this week. We will see, but hoping to have another podcast before the preseason game against the Raiders. Just some things that I'm looking forward to for preseason game number 2. We'll see if that materializes. If not, definitely a recap of that Raiders preseason game, just to discuss again what's some of the good, some of the bad, and players that might have helped themselves that are maybe on the outside looking in right now. But like always, I want to thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to make us part of your listening and watching routine. Whatever you guys do, Between now and when we speak again, everybody stay happy, healthy, and safe, and we will talk soon. Take care.